We are talking Texas, and we do that each and every Monday night right here at the Voice of College Football, 7 Eastern, 6 Central. Make it a stop each and every Monday as we get into the summer, get you set for August camp. And again, Matthew Miller's here, of course, to break down Texas football right here. Leave those comments and questions, everyone. Gather around. We'll be here for 60 or so. Matthew, how's it going tonight?
It's going good, Mark. I think we're 3.5 months from the start of Texas football, so we're getting closer each and every day. Looking forward to that.
We are. It's a pretty early start to the season. Week 1 is August 31st, everyone. And so there's a regular season week, Saturday in August, and there's a couple games the weekend before. And of course, Texas has week 2 at the Big House against Michigan. Who's week 1? I forget.
I believe it's Colorado State. I could be mistaken on that. It could be like Louisiana Monroe. I'm actually not 100% sure now that you asked that.
All right. Well, plenty of time to dig into that. That's another deal, folks. During the summer, we'll bring in media from the various big opponents in the SEC and Michigan to talk up those matchups early, get the early previews. All right. Last week, we talked about cornerback Javion Cole coming in from San Jose State and what he could provide. Ran down the numbers and his pretty impressive stats in coverage. All right. So this week, Matthew, it's Jermaine Lole. And so defensive lineman at 6'3", 310. And of course, I heard some comments this week from Sark just talking about there's not enough big humans out there. So you got to get as many as possible because there's just not enough of them. And of course, this was the tough spot, of course, from the NFL draft losses of Murphy and Sweat. And so Lole comes in with a ton of experience, started his career in 2018. He's played a lot of football. And it's also kind of sweet that he's a flip from Oklahoma.
Yeah. So we kind of traded blows there the last couple weeks with Dominic Williams deciding to go with Oklahoma over Texas. Then a couple days later, Texas fans are kind of like, we need someone. Well, you got someone. Your prayers were answered. You got Jermaine Lole. Like you said, he's been around for a very long time. 18, he played a lot of games. 10, 19, he played 13 games. Now, this is where the questions do come into play, Mark. He does have some injury history. In 2020, he only played 4 games. 21, he was out. 22, 1 game. 2023, he played 12 games. So hopefully we can get back-to-back healthy years from him. I will say, though, in the season he did play at Arizona State in 2019, he was really good. Like, if we got this type of production, I think it's an actual upgrade over Dominic Williams. 13 games as a sophomore. 71 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, and 6.5 sacks. That's a very good year for an interior player. And last year was the second best year. 5 tackles for loss, 1.5 sacks, 19 tackles. I kind of expect that's the production you're going to get out of him. I don't expect the 13 games in 2019 as a sophomore. I think that was him at his peak health. But again, it's another big body, another good rotation player. I think you're basically stacking B-, C+ players on top of each other at this point. You have Tia Sevilla coming in really early from Arizona. You have Bill Norton coming in a little bit later from Arizona. And then you add Jermaine Lole coming in from Oklahoma, Louisville, Arizona State, wherever you want to call it in this day and age of the transfer portal. He played at 2 of the places, had a quick stop at Oklahoma. So I think overall, this is a very deep group. Again, I do not believe the top end talents there. Again, you're going to have a rotation of Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton, Sadir Mitchell, Tia Sevilla, Bill Norton, and Jermaine Lole. They're all going to play. You're going to have a 6-man rotation that I think the max you're going to see out of those guys is probably 50 to 60% of the snaps. And then the other guys will pick up the scraps. This isn't going to be Byron Murphy and Tavondre Sweat where they're out there 85, 90% of the time. On the high end, 95% of the time. And you're not going to have 2 guys with an over 90 pro football focus grade. That's just not going to happen. I think you're going to have 4 to 5 guys that are going to get a decent amount of reps, and they're probably going to rank in, I don't know, 70 to 80 range of Pro Football Focus. So you're going to be a little bit weaker, but I think the depth is going to be a lot better.
All right, folks, comments and questions here at the Voice of College Football as we talk Texas and talk the SEC. And, of course, the transfer portal winding down at this point. We shouldn't see too much more. Even grad transfers that has been put on hold in regards to there being regulations that in the last month have been set on grad transfers, even having that window that only extended one day past the window for the undergrads. And so there you go. All right. So we'll get back to Texas here in a second. And so comments and questions are welcome. This is especially the time of year, folks, where you can produce the show. But Matthew's got his SEC quarterback room ranking. So don't get hung up just on the starter, folks. But of course, the starter is first and foremost. So do you want to take these from the top? You're going to take these from the bottom and go up?
You know what? We'll take it from the top. Let's start out with, I think, the most intriguing battle, which is up top. Again, a starter matters the most. I think backup, I took into account when I thought they were even. And I think you can debate the top quarterback room in the SEC because I honestly think these are probably two of the top 3 to 4 guys in the country. I'll get called biased, blah, 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 blah. I went number 1 with Texas. I think with Quinn Ewers there last year, 3,479 yards passing, 22 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. His quarterback rating, his QBR, was a little bit lower than I thought. It was 17th in the country at 78.3. His completion percentage was pretty damn good at 69% overall. I think there's obvious room for him to grow here, but I did go with Texas at 1. Could you debate Georgia at 1? Absolutely you could. But then if you are going to have the debate, and I'm going with quarterback room, Arch Manning is better than Gunnar Stockton at Georgia. I have yet to see Gunnar Stockton take, honestly, any snaps. I've seen Arch Manning take some snaps, and I thought he looked pretty good. Obviously, meaningless snaps versus Texas Tech. But overall, I think Texas has a better quarterback room than Georgia and a even starting quarterback. So I went with them with number 1. As I just mentioned, number 2, I am going to go with the Georgia Bulldogs. Carson Beck had a really good year last year. When we talk about QBR, he was actually 5th in the country with an 86 QBR overall and a 72.4% completion percentage. So he was slightly better in those areas than Quinn Ewers. I thought, though, when you look at, they did have one similar matchup. You saw Carson Beck go against Alabama and Quinn Ewers go against Alabama. Quinn Ewers had the better game. It's really not close. Carson Beck, that was probably his biggest struggle last year, was versus Alabama, maybe versus Auburn. But I went with Georgia at number 2. You could argue now that maybe, I don't know if they're going to have Jaden Rashada as their backup quarterback. That will be interesting, but he's hard to read. He's transferred multiple times. I don't know how good he is. Mark, will be interesting, and I'm sure you'll make a video in the future about multiple transfers, especially 5 stars, and what is the hit rate when they're on their third school. It's probably not very high. But yeah, I went with Georgia number 2. Now, I think that's the tier 1. I think you can debate between those two teams. I think there's a little drop off here, and then there's 4 or 5 schools that you can debate for this third spot. I went with Alabama 3. You can definitely debate this, but I think Jalen Milroe is going to have a very good season under a very pro offensive coach in Kalen DeBoer. He was actually surprisingly high in QBR last year. He was 13th. He was actually ahead of Quinn Ewers. I was kind of surprised by that. But what stands out with him, obviously, 531 yards rushing last year and 12 rushing touchdowns on top of the 23 touchdowns passing. So 35 total touchdowns. That's a very good year for Jalen Milroe in his first year as a starting quarterback. And let's be honest here, they did not call plays to his strength until, I would say, 4th or 5th game of the year. And then even then they were spotty with it. So I think overall, Jalen Milroe is going to take a jump up. And this is where, and now if he doesn't, I could be wrong, because there's been reports of Austin Mack, who transferred from Washington, having a good spring. And if he's the starter, I would drop them a little bit lower, but I still think he's pretty good as well as their backup. I think Ty Simpson is going to be the third string quarterback. I think Austin Mack came to Washington to back up Jalen Milroe and possibly take over the starting job if need be. Number 4, again, you could debate for the third spot, Jackson Dart in Ole Miss. 3,364 yards passing for him, 23 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, a 78.5 QBR, so a high QBR for him as well, 65.1% completion percentage. And coming into the season, I mean, Ole Miss is one of those teams that I think killed the transfer portal. I expect them to have a good year. Lane Kiffin is always good with his quarterbacks. So I think this is a fair ranking for Jackson Dart. I think at his peak, he could probably creep up to number 2 if Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck has a down year or a bad year. I don't see him ever being the number 1 starting quarterback in the SEC. And in fact, I think the SEC, like looking at this as I keep going down this list and as we go through this is a really good year quarterback-wise for the SEC. I really like this group of players they have. Number 5, this is where it gets really hard for me. LSU. I like Garrett Nussmeier. There's not many stats. I didn't even write them down because they weren't noteworthy to me. He didn't get enough starts to even mention them, but I like Garrett Nussmeier. I like what they do with this LSU offense. Yes, is he replacing a Heisman winner in Jaden Daniels? Yes, but I do think he can put up similar production in the passing game. Obviously, he's not going to put up the rushing yards. He's not that type of quarterback. He is a pocket passing quarterback, and I think he's going to have a good year. But obviously, you can debate. Again, in this group, I still think we're in this group. And number 6, I'm going to go with Missouri and Brady Cook. He had 3,317 yards passing last year, 21 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. He was 18th in the country in QBR. A really good year for him, and he's returning. This is another big part of it, the weapons you have, and he has really good weapons. You return Theo Weiss, who had a great year. You return what is arguably the number 1 wide receiver in the country in Luther Burden. You do lose the running back that they had last year, but I think they'll be able to replace that. I think their defense, I mean, now I'm just getting Missouri talk, but I think Missouri is just in general going to be a good football team, and I think Brady Cook is going to have another good year. You could debate this. I think you could put him up as high as 3, which I have Jalen Milroe. But we'll see. This is where I do think you're going to jump into the third tier. I think 3 through 6 is where you can debate. Put them in any order you want. I have, and this again, this is the third tier for me. I have Florida. Could I have put Florida a little bit lower? Yes, but I think Graham Mertz had a spectacular year last year, and I expect him to have another pretty good year. It was weird, and it was probably weird for you, Mark, because he was not that good at Wisconsin. He wasn't. But to be honest with you, he's probably their second or third best player on offense, obviously behind Ricky Pearsall, who was their best, in my opinion. And Graham Mertz had a 73 or 72.9% completion percentage, 20 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. He kept the ball, didn't turn it over. He was very good at that. And then this is where you do kind of have to put in the backup, because DJ Lagway was, I believe, the number 1 high school quarterback coming out last year. So very good backup quarterback if they do decide to go that route. That's the only reason I really have them over my 8 team in Tennessee with Nico Imalivia. And I think he's going to have a good year. I just haven't seen enough. I saw him versus a good Iowa defense, and I thought he was pretty good. But can he repeat that on a week in and week out basis in a tough SEC? Possibly. I think, like I said, the highest I think I could put him on this list is 7. And that's why I think this is the third tier. Number 9, I'm still going to consider this as third tier, but maybe I shouldn't. Oklahoma with Jackson Arnold. A lot of talent. A high 5-star recruit. He can definitely climb up this list with a really good season. He's very mobile, pretty accurate from what I've seen. Arm strength is pretty good. I don't think it's great or elite, but I'm going to have number 9, Oklahoma, and Jackson Arnold, like I said, a 5-star coming out. And number 10, this is a guy that just cannot stay healthy. Connor Wegman. Connor Wegman, I think, has a lot of talent. I believe he was a 5-star as well. 979 yards in 5 games last year, 68.9% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, and an 87.2 QBR. That would be better than any quarterback I've named so far and out of this list. So that's pretty crazy. His issue is health. If he can stay healthy, I think he can be a very good quarterback. But again, the number 1 criteria is availability, and he's just not healthy. Number 11, this is kind of where we get into the like unknown here. Kentucky with Brock Vandergrift doesn't have much to go on here. I know he's highly rated coming out of high school. Georgia kind of for a while was stacking these type of quarterbacks, and he makes the transition to Kentucky. We'll see what he can do. I don't expect a lot. Like Will Levis obviously got drafted high in the NFL draft, but really didn't show much at Kentucky. He was one of those head scratches to me at why people were drafting him or mocking him so high. He's exceeded my expectations so far with the Tennessee Titans. I don't really expect Brock Vandegrift in this offense to do much more than what Will Levis did. So that's why I have him ranked 11th. Could he possibly move up a couple spots? I could see that. I don't see him being ranked any higher than 8 on this list. And then this is where it drops off quite a bit after this. Number 12, I have Auburn and Peyton Thorne. It's basically putting a lipstick on the pig with the last 4 guys here, honestly. So I went with Peyton Thorne, 1,755 yards passing, 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, 61.1% completion rate. I have him so high because I believe in Hugh Freeze. I think Hugh Freeze is a very good offensive coach. I think he realizes what the strengths and weaknesses of Peyton Thorne are, and I think he's going to get the most out of Peyton Thorne that anyone possibly could, honestly, because I don't think Peyton Thorne's that good. Number 13 is Mississippi State's Blake Shapen in their quarterback room. Again, another guy that struggles with health. 8 games, 61.7% completion percentage last year at Baylor, 13 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. If this guy can stay healthy in a Jeff Lebby offense, I do think he can perform pretty well. I don't really see him getting any higher than 11th on this list, but I think he can do okay, especially for Mississippi State and Jeff Lebby in his first year. And then number 14, I have Arkansas with Talon Green, the Boise State transfer. Man, the passing stats are pretty ugly. 57.1% completion percentage, 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 46 in the country QBR. His strength is rushing the ball, 436 yards rushing, 9 touchdowns. So I have him 14th. Number 15, a guy that was just named the starting quarterback, I believe, like this past week, Lenoris Sellers at South Carolina. Basically nothing to go on other than he was a 4-star coming out of high school. And I don't know what to expect out of this guy. And then number 16, I have Vanderbilt. I actually think I may have underranked them. They could probably be 14th, maybe even 13th on the list. Diego Pavia from New Mexico State. My only issue with him is he's jumping from Conference USA to the SEC. I think that's a gigantic leap for somebody. But 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, 62.9 QBR, 60.4% completion percentage. I think he's pretty good. I just haven't seen him versus the SEC. I probably could have bumped him up. I probably could have bumped him up to 14th and then had Arkansas 15th and South Carolina 16th, but it was hard for me to decide. But that is my list, Mark. If anyone wants to debate on any of those, I think, like I said, I think there are definite tiers here and teams you can bump up or down, but I think I got the tiers right for the most part.
Well, I'm not necessarily going to debate. I will fill in with some of my thoughts here. So we'll take it from the top. I didn't prepare for this. So this is my bad. Matthew let us know that we're going to talk quarterbacks this week, and I totally forgot. So anyway, I'm familiar with all these people. I've watched all these people play, except for the Vanderbilt quarterback from, where is he from?
New Mexico State.
New Mexico State. Never seen him. Well, if I've seen him play, it was in their bowl game last year. New Mexico State, their one significant note of last season, they were the only team in college football to not reach the national championship game that played 15 games. Why they played 15 games, I don't know. They just like playing football, I guess. So they played 15 games. They went 10-5, kind of like Hawaii did a number of times where they played 15 games, even though they did not make a playoff or anything like that. So
hey, they also got paid. They also got paid a decent amount to beat Auburn in the second to last week of the season.
They did that, and they had Jerry Killett as their head coach, who did a heck of a job. But then he had health problems again, so he had to quit, and he went off on. So more things are coming to mind with New Mexico State. Before their bowl game, he went off on the facility there at the bowl site. And I don't remember exactly what was involved there, but I watched it.
They were playing at New Mexico's bowl site, weren't they? Like the University of New Mexico, and
Yes.
their rivals. So they treated them like crap the whole time while they
Yeah.
were there. Yeah.
Yeah. He went off on that. It was pretty good. And then he resigned right after the game. All right. So Texas, we'll get back to the top of the list here. And the difficulty with the quarterback situation in evaluating the rooms and ranking the rooms is that if the starter does not get hurt, then it doesn't matter how good the room is. It does not matter. But suddenly, if the quarterback starter gets hurt, then it matters how good the backup is. So it's unlike any other position. Yeah, I'm going to go with, I don't know how many starting quarterbacks are lost during a season, but certainly I would think the majority of teams need a backup at some point to play meaningful snaps. So the odds are that you need the backup. And based on everything I know at this point, similar to you, I'll take Arch Manning over Gunnar Stockton. Now, in terms of starters, Quinn Ewers, Carson Beck. That's a tough call. I think they're extremely comparable in terms of production. And I've seen them both play quite a bit of football. I can make a noticeable distinction between Quinn Ewers' arm talent. For as good as Carson Beck is, I think Quinn Ewers has just got a higher ceiling with more talent than Carson Beck does. So Texas, Georgia, pretty similar thoughts there. Yeah, Jalen Milroe, once Alabama figured it out, and certainly people were talking about Alabama's demise after they played Texas and then South Florida, and Jalen Milroe was horrible, and Alabama was going to lose 4 games and all of that. Certainly reminded people that they've been through that before, and they figured out how to use Jalen Milroe. Now he gets paired with a passing coach, a coach who so as long as Kalen DeBoer, and I believe he's got a grasp on this, knows how he needs to coach and how he needs to play call, could certainly do wonders with Jalen Milroe's passing skills potentially. Ole Miss and Jackson Dart, I'm good with that. You've got some faith in Garrett Nussmeier. I don't think that that's necessarily crazy, but you do have him placed ahead of 3 guys that have significant experience in big time college football with Brady Cook, Graham Mertz, and Peyton Thorne. Yeah, I'm good with Garrett Nussmeier there. He did play the bowl game against Wisconsin, and he played extremely well. Threw 4 or 5 touchdown passes, put up 35 points. A really good performance against a decent Badger defense. Mizzou and Brady Cook, I'm good with that. Yeah, they lose their top rusher, Cody Schrader, one of the best in the nation, but I think they'll be fine. He's got his number 1 weapon, Luther Burden, back. I try not to do these rankings based on what I think the numbers are going to be, based on offensive line and weapons. I try to do it more on how good I think the player is. So I'm going to have one guy elevated here. I don't know how much further than you, but I've got a bit of a different take on one of these guys. Brady Cook, nothing about his game necessarily jumped off the page at me or jumped off the screen the number of times that I saw him last year. And that's not a knock. That's also a positive that 21 touchdowns, 6 picks, didn't make mistakes. Obviously, Missouri had a nice season at 11-2. Yeah, Graham Mertz, I believe, spent his entire season or his entire career in the high 50s percentile at Wisconsin. And I don't know if he finished off the season with Florida, but at one point late in the season, he was on pace to set the all-time SEC completion percentage record. I thought he had a great season too. I don't know what else he could have done. What's interesting about their situation with how tough the schedule is and that they've got an heir apparent, and Graham Mertz is, I don't think, going to be a great quarterback, but certainly took steps in the right direction last year, is that if this was a coach who was comfortable with his coaching situation, his job security, when they get off to a 2-3 start, he may, in another situation, go to DJ Lagway and start to play for his future. But Billy Napier is going to want to win as many games as possible to hopefully keep his job.
Yeah, and so I actually heard like an interesting thing, and I wanted to get your opinion on this. So college and NFL have always been separated because there's never been like a free agency thing. Now there is, and what you'll see in the NFL is they always play the younger guy because then they pitch, look what we have. Let me develop this guy. Let me put the pieces around him. You could kind of do that with DJ Lagway at Florida where, hey, this guy's actually pretty good. I'm pretty good with quarterbacks. If you let me get the pieces, because we're Florida, we can get the pieces. We can put this around him. We can be good again. Is that not a realistic scenario in college still?
I think it's a realistic scenario for us to sit here and talk about and for football minded people to talk about. But I don't know if you can convince an administration that you're going 4-8 and you're posting a third consecutive losing season, but you've got this promising quarterback and trying to sell them that you're the only guy who can coach him and develop him. I don't know that that's going to roll.
That's fair.
But I think it's valid to a certain extent, but I just don't know if you're going to convince college administrators that. So Mertz at 7, I'm fine with that. I'm not going to re-rank these. Not that I would rank them exactly the same, but I don't see anything egregious here by any stretch. You obviously have to take, so you can either take the conservative approach, everyone, when you rank quarterbacks that you don't know about and say, okay, we're going to put them at the back of the line, or you can say, I'm going to make a projection. I ranked Bryce Young a couple of years ago as the second best quarterback in the country going into the season, and he had like 6 pass attempts.
Yeah.
And people ripped me to shreds saying, how can you do that? Well, by the end of the year, he
was the best quarterback in the country.
Won the Heisman Trophy. So I just took a shot. I basically thought, okay, every time Nick Saban has had a quarterback competition, when he's had inexperienced quarterbacks, whether that was Jake Coker against Blake Sims or whoever it was, whoever, I can't think of the quarterback that got the starting nod over Jalen Hurts going into 2016. Anyway, he went to Arizona
USC.
State.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
But so this was the only time I could remember where Nick Saban had a completely inexperienced quarterback, and he still, even before spring practice, said Bryce Young's the starting quarterback. So if he sold Nick Saban that early, then he had sold me. So I said Bryce Young, number 2 quarterback in the country that particular year. So I take my shot. So here you go with Nico. And I'm going to have to phonetically go back and try to pronounce his name because I don't remember how to do it. Ia Maliavea. I think that's what it is.
I've done it like 4 different ways.
Ia Maliavea. I think that's it. Anyway, so he played well against Iowa. I don't necessarily recall much of that game. That was really his coming out party against a good defense. And he played well. And he's got all the tools. And if he's the starting quarterback for Josh Heupel, then I got to think he's going to produce numbers. Oklahoma, Jackson Arnold threw some costly picks in their bowl game against Arizona, but threw for a ton of yardage. But he did throw, he kind of threw the game away. But young player, of course, and taking over for Dylan Gabriel at that point. Yeah, he makes some comments there about Connor Weigman and his availability. I was impressed with him. I saw him against Miami last year, and he had to throw the ball like 53 times, and he was under siege the whole game, had no running game, and did not win the game, but he did everything he possibly could. 8 touchdowns, 2 picks. We've got Kentucky, and so we've got the former Georgia quarterback. I just drew a blank.
Brock Vandagriff.
Yes, that Georgia room finally got broken up. So Brock Vandagriff, goes to Kentucky. I assume he's going to do well. He's a good player. He's obviously got a ton of talent, but we've not seen him play.
That's why I kind of grouped like 8 through 11. If you notice, they're talented guys, but I don't really know what to expect from them because they don't have that many starts under their belt.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I am right there with you.
But
Now, the
then
one
I
guy,
have 12 through 16 there because they're just bad. And when I've seen them, so they don't need to be any higher.
well, this is where I'm going to disagree with you to a certain
Oh, okay.
extent. Uh, I'm going to stick up for Peyton Thorne a little bit here. So
Okay.
if you go back a few years with Michigan State, uh, I know he threw like 27 touchdown passes
Yeah, I noticed that 27 touchdowns, like 7 interceptions, I think, his
against a
second year
good
at Michigan
conference
State.
and a good schedule. That might have been, was that the year they had Kenny Walker and went 11-2?
I think it was because it was so he's at Auburn. Then his last year at Michigan State, which was 2 years ago, he was not good. And then it was
Yeah.
the year before. So yeah, I think Kenneth Walker was there.
Yeah, so I'm not selling Peyton Thorne as a top half of the league quarterback by any stretch, but I do think that he's capable. I don't know what happened to him last year. I know that they were just atrocious throwing the football, regardless of who they put in there, and he was the main guy. So Hugh Freeze is supposed to be an offensive guy and he didn't go out and get anyone. So they still have Peyton Thorne as their starting quarterback after a miserable. They were bottom 5 to 10 in the nation in pass offense. Mississippi State, who'd they go get?
Blake Shapen.
Oh, yeah. The Baylor quarterback. I've seen him play. Nothing special. Runs around. He's a gamer. He's a baller. He's a tough kid. Arkansas. So Taylen Green. See, I would put Peyton Thorne. Well, you've got Peyton Thorne in front of these guys as well. So
Yeah.
I don't necessarily. I wouldn't elevate Peyton Thorne much higher, if at all, any higher than what you've got. I might just have a slightly different take on his competency. But Taylen Green, he won the Mountain West Conference. You can say that for him. But the numbers are not favorable. And then I know nothing about the South Carolina quarterback coming in from FCS play. Was that it?
Yeah, Lenora Sellers. I just know he's a big dude with those goggles like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wore. That's basically all I
Oh,
know
I
about him.
haven't seen him.
Yeah.
And then I've heard the name, but then we've got the Vanderbilt quarterback. Who did they go get?
Diego Pavia.
Oh yeah. Yeah, they just lost Michael Wright was their starting quarterback a couple seasons ago, and actually he's transferred a couple times. He just transferred again yesterday and went to Northwestern, where he's going to fight out for the starting job. So got no issues with quarterback rankings. I don't know if we've got too much activity in the chat in regards to anybody's thoughts about any of these guys. LW says that he saw Connor Weigman in person against Klein Kane. Oh, in high school football, he was a one-man show. Talent is there. I'm interested to see what the new coaches get out of him. Yeah, it may just be a better, more functional program at Texas A&M. May just be a good thing overall, even though Mike Elko is not an offensive guy. May just be more sane and more functional and healthier with him in charge.
No, 100%. I mean, I think he's just I don't know, he's a mature guy compared to, I guess, Jimbo. I don't think Jimbo's immature or anything. I just think Jimbo kind of lost his way with the way NIL was going and basically just bought a recruiting class that didn't want to come there. And then you saw what happened from that. Whereas Mike Elko's like, if you don't want to come here, we're not going to, just force you to take the biggest NIL packages that we have. So I agree. I think Mike Elko was a good hire. Unfortunately, that hurts to say. And I think Connor Weigman can definitely fly up this list. Like I said, I got him at 10. I mean, I think any of these guys with Nico at 8, Jackson Arnold at 9, Connor at 10, and Brock Vandergraff at 11, I think the highest I could see them getting to after this year, probably 4 or 5. I really don't see Quinn, Carson Beck, or Jalen Milroe being surpassed by any of the guys I have behind them. I think those are pretty legit good top 3 quarterbacks in the SEC, but I think there's definitely some movement between 4 and 11 that I could see.
So most folks are watching us on X right now. So we do appreciate you being here on X with 59 people watching over there. But if you want to get involved in the chat, please make yourself available here on YouTube. Get on over here to YouTube and you can jump into the chat, talk college football with everybody here. We appreciate you, Jackson. The Amazon links in the description section of all the videos. Please use the Amazon link. It's the same shopping experience for you and does not cost you a penny. All right. Do we have any comments or questions beyond Connor Wiegman here?
But I also wanted to point out, I did this last year with the Big 12. I ranked literally everything you can possibly rank: coaches, offensive line, quarterback, everything like that. I basically gave it a point system. Obviously, one's 1 point, 16's the worst you can possibly do, so 16 points. I put an average down after all the rooms, and then that's how I thought the teams would finish on one side, and then I actually gave my picks on the other. And surprisingly, they were pretty similar without me even trying to do that. Like they kind of lined up. So I'm going to do that the same this year. So far, we've done what? Coaches, quarterbacks. We'll probably do, I don't know, offensive line. I think is going to be very interesting. I know I'm going to get called a homer, but you're going to see a lot of Texas and Georgia at 1 and 2 is my sneaking suspicion on that.
Well, that's the way it's playing out in the time being. And for the first time in a long time, Alabama is somewhat of a wild card. We know that they're loaded with talent and they're going to be good, but how good? Yeah, that remains to be seen. I think that the Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, Ole Miss, wow, you could even go Texas A&M, Missouri tier. There's a lot to be sorted out there. Any of those teams could emerge, and any of them could slump into an 8-4, 7-5 season.
Yeah, I think just adding, obviously, it makes sense. Adding Oklahoma and Texas, the SEC is just, I mean, just looking at this quarterback list is very deep. Like I like 1 through 10 on this quarterback list a lot. You might even be able to throw Brock Vandagriff in there at the end of the year, but 1 through 10 is very solid. I would put this 1 through 10 up there against any other conference. I don't see the 10th best quarterback in any other conference being as good as like a Jackson Arnold or Connor Wegman.
No.
Yeah.
No. The ACC has quarterbacks at Miami, and then they've got serviceable quarterbacks at North
DJ is the
Carolina.
second best quarterback.
I was asked to do a 3-tier ACC all-conference team, first, second, and third team. I didn't put DJ on. I don't think I put him third team. I think I kept him off. I thought about it. He was under consideration, but yeah, a lot of people would put him second team all conference in the ACC, and yeah, he would not be in the top 10 in this league.
No, and at best, like maybe you can argue like 8th, but I wouldn't take his upside over 8 through 10 on my list, in my opinion. But yeah, you could argue it.
Yeah, you could. He's not that awful at all. And when I say that he's a decent quarterback. He's a decent quarterback, but he's played a lot of football, and I don't know that he's just suddenly going to get better.
And then in the Big Ten, can he even scrounge up 10 quarterbacks?
Dylan Gabriel, Will Howard. I'm expecting Drew Aller to be good.
Yeah.
And then after that, Miller Moss should be good, but he's a Brock Vandagriff. We don't know. He's supposed to be good. Yeah, he played one great bowl game that is being given way too much attention, I think, by certain USC backers as proof that he's going to be an excellent quarterback. But other than that, wow. There's not a whole lot there. There's a lot of potential there. Michigan State brings in Aiden Childs from Oregon State, and MJ Morris leaves NC State and goes to Maryland, where he's probably going to be the starter. Brendan Sullivan leaves Northwestern, goes to Iowa. If he can run a manageable offense, Tyler Van Dyke had a great 8 or 9 game run in 2021. He goes to Wisconsin. So there's possibilities, but there's just way too many. Dylan Raiola could be off to a great career someday, but he's by no means a lock. There are probably 7 quarterbacks here that are a lock to be at least good quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks, like the first 7 or so.
Yeah, exactly. I think the only question, I guess you could say Garrett Nussmeier at LSU, but I think I've seen enough to where I think he's going to be good at least. But yeah, Jackson Dart, Jalen Milroe, Carson Beck, Quinn Ewers, Brady Cook, And then Graham Mertz, I even think is good. Yeah, I think there's at least 6 guys that are locks to be good quarterbacks in the SEC.
I know the Big Ten has 2 good quarterbacks. Yeah.
The Big 12 actually might have an argument for the second best conference quarterback wise. I mean, Shedeur Sanders right there bumps you up pretty high. And then let's see, we got Arizona's, I forget what his name is, but he was very good.
Yep.
Yeah, he was very good last year. Kansas State with Avery Johnson. Yeah, I think he might have the second best group of quarterbacks, honestly.
Cam Rising.
Yeah.
There you go. All right, folks. We do appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football. This is our destination on Mondays. So thanks for stopping by. This is every Monday at 7 Eastern and 6 Central. As I try to navigate this question here. Bama's biggest question, Mark, is the defensive backfield. A lot of new faces, mostly freshmen and transfers.
Texas can feel that one, LW. That's our biggest question, too.
All right. Well, I guess we will put a wrap on this one, as we don't have anything else to review, folks. But we do appreciate you stopping by. And again, it's every Monday, 7 Eastern, 6 Central, with Matthew, with myself, talking Texas football. Tell your friends, get them on in here every Monday. Okay, Matthew.
Thank you, Mark.
Knocking this out, and we'll get together next Monday.
See you guys then.